Last week, the Massachusetts Board of Elementary and Secondary Education voted to take the Holyoke Public Schools under receivership, state control, due to chronic academic underperformance. We spoke with Mayor Alex Morse of Holyoke, who also serves as school committee chair, to ask him about the impact of the state action.
This community, by and large, opposed receivership. If you look at the public hearings, the actions by the school committee and the city council. But I think throughout this process, we've all also recognized that the school department and the public schools could be doing a better job for more of our students. And so in the aftermath of last week's vote by the Board of Education, I think we have to see this partnership as an opportunity to improve outcomes.
You've been questioned, criticized might be too strong a word, but by some in Holyoke, said they didn't think you were forceful enough in your opposition to the state takeover. They pointed to a piece you wrote for the Republican before the board vote where you basically said, look, if receivership comes, we have to make it work because the future of the schools and the kids is going to be up to us one way or the other. How do you respond to that? What do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the mayor of the entire city. I also serve as chair of the school committee, but I also, in my capacity, I meet with manufacturers on a monthly basis and hear their stories about their inability oftentimes to employ qualified young people. I meet with folks at career centers who have dropped out of the high school and are unable to find work. I am in meetings constantly with the police chief and our captains talking about what are the demographics of the young people getting arrested here, by and large high school dropouts. And so I see the ramifications of the data in the school system day in and day out. And so to be honest about our shortcomings in the school department is in no way a critique of the quality of educators we have in Holyoke. It's a mere acknowledgement that we still have a lot more work to do. It's appropriate, obviously, to tout the success of students, and oftentimes I share my personal story of success in the public schools, becoming the first in my family to go to college, and I credit all of my teachers and my family for that opportunity. But I also recognize that not everyone has that same story or the same privilege that I have grown up with. And so I ran for this position because I wanted all students, no matter what language they spoke or what neighborhood they're from, to have that same opportunity. And so in that piece, basically, it was, this is a strong possibility. The board of the Commissioner Chester had made the recommendation a few days before I penned that editorial, and I thought it was important to have a mature conversation about the data in the public schools and where we need to be.
Just last Friday, a couple of days after the state vote, 3 days after, you met with the Education Commissioner, Mitchell Chester. You came out to Holyoke. What can you share with us of what you learned, what you found out about what he's planning, what he's envisioning, and what your own role is going to be now?
Yeah, I think we met last night as a school committee for the first time since the vote. There was a lot of questions by other school committee members as to what the role of the body is moving forward, and there's still a lot of questions to be answered. It's been a week today since the vote, and so we expect that there'll be a time of transition. I appreciate the commissioner coming out to Holyoke so quickly to meet with me. I know he had a very productive and meaningful meeting with all of the teachers and staff of the public schools on Friday afternoon as well. And by and large, I've heard nothing but positive feedback from those teachers at that meeting in terms of reassuring folks that it's not true that all teachers will get fired, that all teachers will have to reapply for their jobs. We've taken the time to go out to Lawrence and talk to the receiver, Jeff Riley there, his administration team and teachers, just to see how the process unfolded in Lawrence and if anything we could learn from that process and make sure it works for the city of Holyoke, because we do have a unique community here. We have a very strong community in terms of our level of civic pride, and we have a lot of things that are working well in the public schools, and I think I appreciate the commissioner's remarks about whatever's working in Holyoke, we're gonna build off of that and improve on it. So, fears that our sports programs and our advanced placement and our arts programs and everything good about the district will stay and be built upon, and I will make sure that is the case. I've made it clear to the commissioner that we support an individual receiver, not a private organization managing the entire school district. I think we need to stay away from privatizing education. And what they've done in Lawrence is essentially appoint a new superintendent with both the authority of the school committee and the superintendent.
The whole issue of fair and whether this kind of a takeover is fair, I think of teachers and administrators in schools, almost any urban location in America today, and Holyoke certainly has more than I think its share of difficulties. We'll call it poverty. And this is not to say that if a kid's poor, they can't learn. Yep. But it's tough enough no matter what you face. But if you're coming to school hungry or from an unsettled or difficult home situation, the difficulties are multiplied, then you're tested and you're scored. Is what's happening fair? Pointing the finger and finally saying, look, the schools aren't doing their job. It's not happening.
I don't think that the commissioner or the state is necessarily pointing fingers at anybody in particular. I think they're looking at the data. They're looking at not only standardized testing, but take away standardized testing for a second and ask yourself, by what metric are we doing phenomenal? And I don't think we can say very clearly that by any metric we're outperforming our peers in other communities. Not to say we don't have a lot of great students doing amazing things. Simply put, our public school system should be the biggest equalizer in our community and in our society. And right now that's not doing, it's not serving that purpose in the city of Holyoke. When you have only 13% of our third graders proficient in reading, 60% graduation rate, the majority of those students who are dropping out are poor students or students of color. And so when we think about the future of our city, in terms of economic development, public safety, or infrastructure, investing in the public schools and focusing on them is only going to benefit our community in the long term.
You know, if you pick up any real estate listings anywhere, good schools is always in there as an attraction to come to a community. What's your concern about the overall economic impact on the city of Holyoke of this happening now with the schools? You've been working to bring in business, attract new residents. You've got things like the Green High Performance Computer Center that's drawn national attention to Holyoke and got people looking and saying, this is a place of opportunity. This is a place of low-cost energy. Things can happen here. How much, or do you think, the school takeover impacts that?
Yeah, I think at this point we need to call it a partnership, because we need to see this as a partnership not only on the schools, but how else can the state assist Holyoke in terms of the other facets that impact the students' ability to learn in the schools, and that's directly addressing poverty and development and job opportunities for people who need them most in the city. You know, frankly put, we already have those concerns among young families. Are they going to stay in Holyoke if they want to send their kids to the public schools? Are they going to move to Holyoke if they have school-aged children? Is a business going to move here? I think you look at the data now, and we can't make the overwhelming argument that that other communities can make. And so I think, you know, we've been very serious about economic development, other efforts, and I think this recent announcement has sent a message that we're also serious about public schools. And I think, looking back, I think we all need to hope and expect and wish the best for whoever the receiver is. And hopefully we'll look back and remember this time as the time in which the public schools began their transformation. That's how we need to see it. I think, you know, the vote has happened. The commissioner and the board have made their decision. As a community, it's time to embrace it and use this as a real opportunity for the city.
Well, Mayor Alex Morse, thanks for coming in, giving us some perspective on the situation with the Holyoke schools. Appreciate it, sir.
No, thank you.